Hello everyone. So today I am going to teach you how to create this. Perfect. So the starting assets I used are the Moab Desert Collections, Sandstone Desert, and the Quarry Collections. So just add this to your project and you'll be ready to get started. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is create a camera, bring it into my scene, and slowly set up my shot. So in this case, if anyone wants to look exact, for the film back, I'm using 16:9 DSLR. This will not be set to default, so you have to switch that. And then the focal length as of right now is 35. I believe the final project I switched to 24. So basically, I'm just setting up the scene, making sure it looks the way I want it to look. And then I'm going to bring in a chair, so I have something to give me like a nice bit of scale. Cool. Once the chair's in, I'm going to go up to the top left-hand corner, go down to Shapes, and then add a cube. Now I'm going to elongate the cube so I can use it as nice big panels. And if you click R or I believe T on your keyboard, it will bring up the menu to elongate it. And then I'm now just going to be using the panels to really just block out my scene. Cool. Once that's blocked out, I'm going to go into my textures and add the quarry ground texture. This isn't really going to be our main texture, but this is going to be overall used to make sure it looks the way I want it to look. Then I'm going to open up the texture, go to tiling, and change the tiling to 1.5. Cool. Now I'm going to use the Moab Desert Detailing, and I'm going to add that to all of my panels. But first, I'm going to click on it, go to the material, double click the material. Once that comes up, you can actually go to Albedo Color and slowly adjust the color just so it matches the ground a little better. This doesn't have to be perfect. Again, this isn't really going to show in the scene, but if there's any cracks in material, it's nice to have a background that kind of like hides it, or else you're just going to have it's just white. So now I'm going to add it to all my panels, and we're set to get started on building the scene. So I'm going to open the contract drawer, filter for static meshes, so now I can see every single mesh that's available to me. And I'm going to slowly bring in a bunch of different meshes to build out the walls of my cave. I invite you to rotate, make them larger, smaller, and really just play around with it. Sometimes what helps me is just copying the same thing again and again, just so I can like build on top of it and kind of change different meshes. And kind of block out what it looks like. So as you can see, I'm moving things around to slowly build out my scene the way I want it to look. Now, same thing when it comes to the ground. I'm going to bring in a few different ground pieces that I will then use later on to expand and contract and really build out the ground using actual materials. Cool. Now once that's set, I'm gonna make another cube and add the material that I used for the ground and use it as my roof. Once the roof is set, I will do the same thing with the roof, slowly bringing materials. In this case, I'm gonna use large rocks and use the bottom of those rocks to try and build out the roof of the scene. Cool. When it comes to setting up the scene, pick on your directional light and just rotate it so the light is shining through. Once you do that, go to exponential height fog, type in volume, VOL, and enable volumetric fog. You can then go back to your directional light and make sure that casting shadows is checked. Now back in exponential height fog, with volumetric fog enabled, I would increase the scattering distribution to 0.9. Right now I'm going to play around with it, see what works, but I end up sitting on 0.9. Now I'm going to adjust the directional light a little more to make sure it's grabbing the fog that I want it to grab. And as you can see, it really starts to shine. Cool, now on to foliage. So if you go up to left-hand corner where it says selection mode, click on that and go to foliage mode. Now in foliage mode, I'm going to grab different pieces of grass, enable nanite on all of them, and then drag them in. Next, I'm going to also get some rocks. So to help you out, they'll say SM, which means small, so you know it's probably better to use for small rocks versus large rocks, because you don't want to be painting giant things. So I'm going to bring those two in, enable nanite as well, make sure it's enabled, and then I'm going to bring them into my foliage painter as well. Two more rocks, so I have 4 different rocks to use from. And then you're set. Now I'm going to go back to selection mode and add in a few more pieces to try and bring out the world a little better before I start painting down the foliage. This is really up to you on how you want your scene to look. Play around with everything and make sure it looks the way you want it to before you get into painting. Cool, so I'm going to unclick all the grass foliage, and then I'm going to click on the rock, change the density to 50, go down to the scale max, make that 10, and then go to the brush size and make that 50. Cool, so let's play around with this. Oh, too big. Okay, so let's get rid of all that. And then go down to the max scale and let's change that to 2.5. I like that, but it's a little too big, so let's change the minimum to 0.25. Still a little too big. So let's just change the max to 1. So 1 and 0.25, and I'll be using that to kind of set dress all the corners. Once that's done, I'll also do 0.25 min and 0.25 max to scatter a bunch of small rocks as well. Cool, so uncheck the rocks and then go back to the grass, check the grass, change the density to 250. Let's do a min of 0.65 and keep the max at 1. And then we can use that to dress the rest of our scene. Cool, once that's done, let's click on any of the grass, click on the mesh, and then go into and click on the material that is on the mesh. Find wind and just change wind down to 0.05. You can do this for all the different foliage, just so it's not, waving in the wind inside a cave. Next is Quixel Bridge. So you can go to the window on your top left-hand corner, go down to Quixel Bridge, open it up, and then we're gonna want to add in these 3 different materials. So the first one's gonna be the Japanese decorative lantern. And then we have the rusty hanging chain and the Japanese metal lantern. These will all be free through Quixel Bridge, so just sign up and download those. Once those are in your project, we're going to first set up the chain. So we'll just have it hanging from the ceiling, and then we can bring in the metal lantern, make it a little larger, and just get it perfectly on the chain so it looks like it's hanging there. And you're set. Now I'm going to bring the chain or the lantern and parent it to the chain. Just so if you move the chain, the lantern will go with it. Then I will shift click each, the lantern and the chain, and I'm going to start duplicating them. Cool. Once that's done, I'm going to bring in the other lantern and just place them around the steps of the scene. Awesome. Now that we have the lantern set up, we need to make the actual lantern part of the lantern emissive. So to do that, we're going to right click, click material, and then name the material lantern hanging. There we go. And double click. Cool. Now bring in the materials that were brought in along with the object. And we're going to set them up. So this one goes into base color. The other one will go into normal, and this will be tangent. Apply, save. And then let's open it back up and actually add it to lantern to make sure everything looks the way it should. It does, so perfect. So I'm going to go back to the lantern and get started. So first thing I'm going to move is the main base color further back, since that's what we're changing the most. And then I'm going to add in a cheap contrast. And then if you click S and click, a parameter node will pop up, and I'm going to name this contrast strength. I'm going to plug that in the cheap contrast, plug the R value of the texture sample into the cheap contrast as well. Then I'm going to hold M and click to put a multiply node, and then S click to bring up another parameter node and name this emissive strength. I'm going to plug that into the furthest multiply node, and the multiply node will go into the emissive color. And then I'm going to hold V and click to get a vector node. And then I'm going to bring that down and make it orange, so it has like more of a fire light color. And then plug that into multiply node, take the cheap contrast in the multiply node, go do the contrast strength, make that 0.5. And if you go up here and kind of turn, you'll see this the lantern come to life in a few seconds. Plug in the last multiply and click apply. And then we're going to go down and save. We're going to go down to the emissive strength and click 1, and now you see it's shining a little bit. Now when I exit out, we have a emissive lantern. I'm going to make this a material instance just so I can adjust the light later on if I need to, and then apply it to all my lanterns. Cool. Now for the other lantern, since it's black and not white, the method of doing this is a little different. So again, I'm going to bring in all the same textures. and plug them into their appropriate spots. So this one's into the normal, this one's into the tangent, and then the last texture is going to be in the base color. Apply, save, exit out, and then bring it onto the actual material or static mesh to make sure it looks the way it should. It does, perfect. And then enter back in the material. Now I'm going to hold V and click to get a vector node, and then hold L and click to get a lerp node, and then hold S and click to get a parameter node. The parameter node is going to be lerp strength. We'll take the RGB into A, the parameter node or the vector into B, and the lerp strength into alpha. And this is where we can change the lerp strength to 3000. Next, I'm going to do a 1-, which is basically going to invert what we just did. And then hold M, click twice, and it's going to be 2 multiply nodes, doing very similar to what we did before. Hold S and click for a parameter node. This one is going to be called emissive strength. Plug that into the multiply node. Plug the multiply node into the multiply node. And then we can change this to 1. And then I'm going to hold V and click. And get another vector node and do the exact same thing as before. Make this a little more of like a firelight kind of color. Okay. Plug that into multiply and the 1- into A, and you should be set. Actually, one small little issue. We're going to switch the actual positions of the texture node and the parameter node. So the texture node will go into B and the vector node will go into A. And that's what you need. And there you go. Now both lanterns are emissive. So I'm going to do the same thing as before. Make this material into a material instance just in case I need to change any of the parameters, and add it to all my lanterns. Perfect. Now I'm going to back out of my scene and create another cube to kind of block off the actual back half of my cave. So doing the same thing as before, I'm going to bring it in and block off any light from the atmosphere that would be coming in. I'm actually going to leave a little bit of slit here just so I have a bit of light, because I don't want it to be too dark you can't see anything. Once that's done, I'm going to go back up to the volumes and add in a post-process volume. I'm going to add the post-process volume to my lighting folder and then type in bounds or bound. Infinite extend unbound. You want to click that. It just means it's going to affect the entire scene. Then I'm going to type in exposure and change the compensation to 1.5 just to get a little brighter of a scene. Later, I will be changing the min and max EV. I don't know if I end up actually showing it, but either way, just make sure the min and max EV is the same number. I believe I'm around maybe a -5 in that exposure for the post-process volume, just so you don't have any exposure changes on your final edit. Once that's done, I'm going to go up to the left-hand corner and add in a point light and line up the point light so it's perfectly directly under the lantern, so it looks like that's the emissive from the lantern is actually what's causing the light. Then I'm going to edit the point light a little bit. Let's change the intensity down to 0.05. Perfect. I'm going to change the color so it's a little more lamplight as well, or candlelight. There we go. That's better. And then I'm going to change the radius to max. a source radius 2.001. And I think we're set. From there, I'm just going to be moving these little point lights under every single lantern. Also, as I'm going through this, you're going to see these little red X's on these point lights. That basically means that it is a static light or a stationary light. You can, if you look at the right hand of the screen, it'll say mobility, and next it'll be static, stationary, and movable. In my final edit, I actually make all of these lights movable because the actual lighting pattern that they give off is a little more dynamic and looks better before an edit. So if you want to change that and you want to get rid of those red X's, just change it to movable. Cool. Now we are going to create our fog. So the first thing we're going to do is create a material. So right click, go to materials and type fog. Once that's done, double click and open it up. Now the first thing we're going to do is head to the bottom left of the panel and change material domain, keep it on surface. Blend mode will be translucent, and then shading model will be unlit. And then you're ready to get started. So now right click and type in texture coordinate. S click for a parameter node. And this will be cloud size. And then M click for a multiply node. Now right click for a time node, type in time, get the time node out, and then we're gonna do another parameter, so S click. Time multiplier, and then M click for another multiply. So let's connect all those in. And then I'm gonna add a panner, so right click, add panner. So the coordinate will go into the coordinate sections, and the time will go in the time section. So plug in the multiplies to both. And then now we're going to bring in our texture noise. I will have this texture noise provided in the description. So just go in, download it, and if you actually it'll be a U asset, so you have to drag and drop it into your content folder for your actual project. Once you do that, it'll pop up in your Unreal project and you're ready to get started. So bring both of those textures in, duplicate it, and then add the multiply to both. Add 2 power nodes. And then we're gonna do another S click for a cloud contrast. And we're gonna plug both those into the exponent. Cool. Let's do an add node and a multiply node. Let's change the cloud contrast to 3, the cloud size to 1, the time multiplier to 1 as well, and then for the panner, we're going to do 0.01 and 0.006. And then we'll do the exact opposite for the other panner, so it'll be negative 0.01 and negative 0.006. And then if you want your fog to go faster or slower in the movement, this is where you change it. Perfect. So the next one is we're going to add a pixel depth. S click for another parameter node. This will be called depth fade distance. Right click, add a divide. And then right click again and add a saturate. Now plug everything in. Then we're going to left click, highlight everything, press C, and name this depth fade. Perfect. Now we'll go up top and we'll just do V click to get a vector node. Actually, let's keep this white. So click on it and just go and make it white. This will be the font color. And then S-click. And we'll name this color intensity. And then from there, let's create a multiply. Oops. Let's delete this multiply. Only one multiply. So let's plug in the multiply. Bring the multiply down, delete this one. And then let's highlight this, press C again, and we'll name this emissive color. Perfect. And then actually delete this last multiply, we don't need it. So these are all the different sections laid out. We have one more to go. I'm going to move the cloud noise section across. Add in one more multiply. I'll bring the emissive color into the multiply and then create another multiply. Take the add from cloud noise and saturate from depth fade and bring those into that multiply. And then on this last multiply for emissive color, I'm also going to plug it into emissive color. Cool. Now to get started on the last section. So let's left click and we'll name this geodepth faded distance. Right click and let's add a depth fade. Right click again, let's do a saturate. And then we'll add a multiply. So let's do geodepth fade into faded distance and then the multiply into depth fade. And then depth fade will go into saturate and then saturate will go into multiply. And down here, let's add another parameter node. And we'll call this friend cell exponent. And we can right click and do a vertex normal WS. And then we'll right click again and just do a friend cell node. Plug those in, one in exponent and the normal WS into the normal. Right click for a 1 minus. And then we're going to do a remap value range. We'll do the 1 minus into input. And from here, we're going to do two constants. So just duplicating this other constant. And then we're going to do two parameter nodes, so S clicks. First parameter node will be a Fresnel min. And then the other one will be a Fresnel max. Once those are all set up, just plug them all in a row. Let's make the top constant will be 0, the bottom constant will be 1. And then that will be input low, input high. So the Fresnel min will be target low, Fresnel max will be target high, and then the constant one will be input high. And then from there, let's add another saturate, and then we'll put the remap value range into saturate, and the saturate will go into two places. Bring it up to the multiply, and we'll also bring it up to the multiply from the emissive color. And then take the last multiply and plug that into opacity. Then let's left click, drag, press C, and then name this further fades. And now we need to add all the parameters in. So the first one would be depth fade distance. We can make this 1024. For the Fresnel exponent, let's make this 0.2, and then the Fresnel max can be 0.5, and then geodepth faded distance can be 1000. You can play around with that one depending on what you need. And then the color intensity, we can make this 20. And then you're set. Apply and save, and you're ready to go. Now that that's done, go up to the top left-hand corner, click on the box, go down to shapes, and add in a plane. Enlarge the plane over the area in which you want the fog to be. For me, it's going to be pretty much everything, so I'm going to enlarge it pretty big and drag it down so it's kind of just on the edge of the rocks. We don't want it to have like a pretty quick cutoff, so I'm going to make it a little bigger. There we go. And then drag it a little down, and then open up the content browser and add your fog. And there you go. Now you have fog on the bottom of your scene. And you can play around with this, drag it up, drag it down, make sure you have it where you want it to be. Now the last step is setting up sequencer. So go up to the top left-hand corner, go up to the clapperboard, click add level sequence, and let's just name this SQN1 for sequence 1. Also, you can hide some of the things from your viewport. So in this case, I'm going to hide the foliage right here. That way you can kind of save on computer performance so it doesn't get so laggy. So go down to track and add camera. Once you have the camera, you can go to the bottom right hand corner to drag out the amount of frames you want. In this case, I'm doing 550, and then I think I'm going to bring mine to 500. And then drag it across. And then right now, you're really just setting up the keyframes for the camera. So I'm on the camera. I'm going to do keyframe 1 where it is right now. Drag to the very end of your sequence. Move the camera where you want it to be, and then add one more keyframe right here. And there you go. Your camera will move throughout the 500 frames to where you want it to be. And the last final touch will be adding in a camera shake. So to do that, right click, go to Blueprint Class, click the All Classes drop down menu, type in shake, and do camera shake base. Select. You can name this. Nope. You can name this shake 1. Perfect. Double click it. It's going to bring up a blueprint menu. You don't want that, so cancel it and then open it one more time. And now you have the menu. So change this to Perlin noise. And then now these are going to be all your camera shake patterns, and you can play around this however you want to make it the shake that you're looking for. It can be smooth or intense. Change all these parameters. It's all pretty self-explanatory how the multipliers work. If you want to see how mine is done, I will bring up the one I'm using currently, and this is all it is. So you can pause and copy these parameters if you want into your own. And then now that that is done, you can click track, go to camera shake, add the shake that you want to use, and then now you have your camera shake. Okay, before we get started, make sure you have Movie Render Queue enabled. You can do this through plugins. It's called Movie Render Queue. Click on it or enable it. It'll ask you to restart Unreal Engine, and then when you start it up again, just make sure to click the 3 dots to the right of the clapperboard and make sure that Movie Render Queue is enabled. Once you do that, you can click on the Movie Render Queue and this will pop up. So click on Unsave Configure and then go up to the top left settings and add in anti-aliasing, console variables, and .exr. .exr comes in how it's supposed to. I usually do the JPEG so I can see what I'm exporting, because .exr doesn't naturally show up on your computer through your files. After that, I do anti-aliasing. Spatial and temporal depends on what you're doing. For this, since there's fog, I'm going to do 36 and 6. You can usually change these up depending on the scene. But 36 and 6 will usually do, or 6 and 36 will also do. And then for console variables, you can make a preset. I'll have these written out in the comment section, but all these console variables are basically going to increase the overall export and make it look really nice and clean. So I suggest you add these in, save it as a preset so you can export it on all your future projects. After that, go down to output. At the very top, you can choose where you want it to output to, the file name, and then the output resolution. For my case, I'm going to make this 2560 1440, which is 2.5K, and then you're set. Click accept and go to render local, and you're ready to go. Hope you guys liked the tutorial. Like, subscribe, and comment if you have any questions. I'll always be here to help. So yeah, bye.